And we're in an Indiana cornfield today to talk about the disease Aspergillus erot. Aspergillus erot is caused by the fungus Aspergillus flavus. And this is a fungus that's capable of producing mycotoxins, specifically aflatoxin. And this is a compound that's toxic to both humans and livestock, and we are finding it across Indiana. So we want to talk about how to identify this disease, how to scout for it, and what the next steps would be if you find it in your cornfield. Aspergillus erot can be identified on the cob through a very olive green, dusty mold. And you can see on this ear that it produces a very dry, dusty symptom that's really more of an olive colored. Any kernel on the ear can be affected. We usually see it at tips because the fungus comes in on silks or in wounded areas or damaged areas from insect feeding, bird damage, or even hail damage. And so lots of times people will scout fields and just pull back the tip of the ear to look for the symptoms. But it's important to remember we need to look at the entire ear because kernels lower on the cob may be affected as well, as we can see here. When scouting for Aspergillus erot, it's important to look at as many ears as possible in the field and across the entire field. The disease distribution may not be uniform and may be patchy. It may be easier to find on hillsides, sandy soils, and drought-stressed areas. So when looking, remember, it's important to go through and pull back the entire husk of the cob and inspect it very carefully. Sometimes only a few kernels may be affected, so it's important to look at the entire ear. There are other erots that can have similar symptoms as Aspergillus erot. Two you see here are Trichoderma erot, which produces a bluish-green mold on the cob, and Penicillium erot, which you can see here as more of a grayish-green mold. These can be distributed throughout the field just like Aspergillus erot. You can see here this is the olive-green mold that we talk about with Aspergillus erot, and it's important to get a good diagnosis for these erots because Aspergillus erot can produce the mycotoxin aflatoxin. If you're unsure of what you have in the field, you can send a sample to the Purdue Plant and Pest Diagnostic Lab in West Lafayette. If you confirm that you have Aspergillus erot in a field, it's important to call your crop insurance adjuster before the field is harvested. Crop insurance adjusters may want to inspect the field before assessing damage. Also, it's important to slate that field for harvest as soon as possible. The longer the ears remain out in the environment, the more the fungus can continue to grow and produce aflatoxin. Once the field is harvested, it should be dried as quickly as possible to below 15% moisture and stored below 13% moisture. Although there's nothing that we can do to manage Aspergillus erot at this point in the season, there are things that we can do to minimize the impact of aflatoxin. Early harvest, good storage techniques, and testing grain before feeding to livestock are three key management practices to reduce the impact of aflatoxin on end users.